Okay, so I have a question for you, and I want you to be honest. When you're packing for a trip, you've got the sunscreen, the sunglasses, that one book you've been meaning to read for what, 3 years. Do you ever get that little sinking feeling?
Oh, that voice.
Yeah, that little voice that asks, "Is my being here actually going to mess this place up?"
Ah, the traveler's dilemma. It's almost the universal souvenir now, isn't it? We all want to see the world, but there's this growing awareness that, maybe the world would be better off if we just stayed home.
Exactly.
Well,
It's the guilt trip before the actual trip.
eh,
And for a long time, the industry's answer to that has been sustainable tourism. You
yeah,
know the drill.
yeah,
Reuse your towel, don't step on the coral.
yeah.
Basically, try not to be a complete disaster.
Right, the leave no trace philosophy.
Yeah.
But today, we're diving into something that argues that sustaining just isn't enough anymore. We're looking at a concept that says we shouldn't just aim to be neutral, we should actually aim to be beneficial.
Right.
We're talking about regenerative tourism.
Which sounds lovely, but also a little bit like a marketing buzzword, if I'm honest. So, to find out if it's real, we're doing a deep dive into a very fresh piece of research. It's a research letter titled Co-Creating Regenerative Tourism: Stakeholder Perspectives and Pathways from Banks Peninsula, New Zealand. This was just published January 2026 by Asif Hussain and Francesco Steforne.
And honestly, they couldn't have picked a better laboratory for this than Banks Peninsula.
I was looking at photos of this place
Yeah.
while reading the paper. It is stunning.
Oh, it's incredible.
It's on the South Island of New Zealand, right near Christchurch. It's this rugged, volcanic coastline, super green,
Mm.
just fair dramatic.
It's beautiful, but it's also fragile. It's a major hub for what we call nature-based tourism.
Right.
You don't have these massive skyscrapers or mega resorts there. You have small-scale businesses, a community that's deeply connected to the land.
And a steady stream of tourists coming to see, the penguins and the dolphins.
Exactly. It's a perfect microcosm of the whole industry.
So the mission for today is pretty straightforward. This study didn't just ask one group of people what they thought about this new regenerative trend. They went to all three corners of the triangle: the businesses running the tours, the residents living next door, and of course the tourists themselves.
Which is incredibly rare. Usually academic studies kind of stay in their lane.
Right.
Business journals talk to businesses, sociology journals talk to residents. Putting them all in the same room, so to speak, it reveals some fascinating disconnects.
And some surprising alignments, too. But before we get to the drama of who thinks what, we have to lay the groundwork. I feel like regenerative is one of those terms that gets slapped on everything. How is this actually different from sustainable tourism or ecotourism? Because to me, they all kind of sound like eco-friendly.
It's a great question, and the distinction is it's crucial if we want to understand where the industry is going. Think of it like a health spectrum.
Okay.
So sustainable tourism, the one we all know, is essentially about maintenance. It focuses on minimizing negative impacts.
So it's like treading water.
Exactly. You aren't drowning, but you aren't really swimming anywhere either. It's about keeping the current resources, both environmental and cultural, from getting worse. It's the status quo.
Got it. And ecotourism.
Ecotourism is usually more specific. It's about responsible travel to natural areas, and it really emphasizes conservation and education. It's great, but it can be a bit of a silo,
What do you mean by that?
Well, you can have a fantastic ecotourism lodge in a region where the rest of the economy is stripping the land. It doesn't always tackle the systemic transformation of the whole destination.
So enter regenerative tourism.
Right. Regenerative tourism is about restoration, renewal, and enhancement. The goal isn't just to leave the place as you found it. The goal is to leave the destination better than you found it.
That is a wildly high bar. How do you even measure that?
Well, the authors highlight two key dimensions: ecological integrity and cultural integrity.
Ecological integrity makes sense. Cleaner water, more biodiversity, that sort of thing. But cultural integrity.
Yeah.
Let's unpack that.
Yeah, because usually when we talk green travel, we're just talking about carbon and plastic.
Exactly.
Cultural integrity is about the identity of the place. It's about local practices, traditions, and the relationship between the people and nature. The argument here is that you can't heal the land if you ignore the people who live on it. If the tourism industry displaces locals or, commercializes their culture until it's fake, that's not regenerative, even if you're planting trees.
So it's holistic. It's saying we want this tourism to actually repair the social fabric and the environmental fabric.
Precisely. It shifts the whole mindset from extraction, what can I get from this place, to contribution. What can I give back to this system to help it flourish?
Okay, I love the philosophy. But I'm always skeptical about how this stuff plays out in the real world.
Hmm.
Let's get into the study. How did Hussein and Fuste Fournet actually measure this in Banks Peninsula?
So this was an exploratory study. They conducted a survey between August and September 2023, and they had 55 participants.
Yeah, hold on. 55.
55.
Okay, I have to stop you there because that sounds like a really small number to draw big conclusions from. Can we really trust data from just 55 people?
It's a fair critique, and the authors, they acknowledge it. In a massive quantitative study where you want to predict global trends, you want thousands, of course.
Right.
But this is a research letter focused on a qualitative pulse check of a specific small community. They weren't looking for statistical significance across the planet. They were looking for the nuance of this ecosystem.
So it's less of a census and more of a focus group.
Exactly. It's a signal-finding mission. And because they broke those 55 people down into 3 distinct groups, businesses, residents, and tourists, we get to see the friction points very clearly.
Let's meet the players then. Who exactly are we hearing from?
Okay, first up, you have the business and community organizations. These are the accommodation providers, the tour guides, the conservation groups. Most of them are based in Akaroa, which is the main township. These are the folks whose mortgage payments depend on people showing up.
So high stakes for them.
Absolutely. Then you have the residents. The demographics here were interesting majority women and skewed a bit older, many over 61. These are the long-term locals, the people who remember what the place was like 30 years ago. They're sort of the protectors of the heritage.
And finally, the tourists.
The travelers, domestic and international visitors who were either staying locally or just passing through for the day.
Okay, so we have the sellers, the neighbors, and the buyers. Let's start with the business perspective. New Zealand has this massive 100% pure brand. I assume the operators in Banks Peninsula are pretty savvy about this stuff.
They are. The data shows a really high awareness. 75% of the businesses surveyed were familiar with regenerative tourism and agreed with the principles. And it wasn't just talk about them. 2/3 of them had already implemented some form of eco-friendly or regenerative practices.
So they're walking the walk, they're putting in the solar panels, they're doing trapping for invasive species.
They are. And they're looking forward, too. The study mentions they're actively looking at technology and innovation to enhance these efforts. They get that their economy and the environment are completely interconnected. If the peninsula loses its natural beauty, their business model, well, it evaporates.
But I feel a but coming.
There is a but, and it's a big one. It's what I'd call the communication gap.
The communication gap. What do you mean?
Well, despite doing all the work and, agreeing with the principles, less than half of these businesses actually engage with their customers about these practices.
Wait, really? So they're doing the good deeds in the dark? That seems so counterintuitive. If I ran a hotel and I was saving the local penguin population, I would put a plaque in every single room. Why are they so quiet?
The study suggests a few reasons. Lack of time is one, lack of resources. But I think the deeper issue is a fear of ruining the vacation vibe. They don't know how to integrate that story into the visitor experience without it feeling, forced or preachy.
I guess I could see that. You don't want to check in for your romantic weekend and immediately get a lecture on carbon sequestration at the front desk.
Exactly. It's the fear of being a killjoy. But because of that fear, you have this silence. The businesses are asking for help. They explicitly said they need advice, direction on initiatives, and financial incentives. They need a scaffold to support them so they can tell this story with confidence.
Okay, so businesses are ready, but they're mute. Let's pivot to the residents. These are the people who have to live with the tourism 365 days a year. Usually this is where you find the grumpy resistance, the get off my lawn crowd.
We do see some complexity here. The residents are also highly aware. Again, we see that 75% familiarity figure. They support the concept. But there is a bit of an intention-action gap on their side, too.
How so?
While they support the idea ideologically, only about 1/3 of the residents surveyed actually use resources to make sure they are engaging in eco-friendly activities themselves.
That is. Well, that's relatable, isn't it? We all want a cleaner planet, but sometimes we forget the reusable bag or we drive when we could walk.
It is human nature. But what's more interesting to me is what the residents value. The core of their perspective in this study is sense of place.
Sense of place. I love that phrase. It sounds very poetic, but what does it mean operationally?
It means authenticity. Residents believe that for tourism to work, the products and experiences have to be genuine. They feel that if you lose the unique identity of Banks Peninsula, if it just becomes a generic tourist trap, you lose everything.
So they're protective of the vibe.
Yes, but they see a direct economic link. The residents believe that when they, the community, are involved in delivering the experience, it leads to repeat visits from tourists.
That makes perfect sense. Think about your own travels. The trips you remember aren't the ones where you stayed in some cookie-cutter hotel. It's the time the local shop owner recommended a hiking trail, or you had a real conversation with someone at a cafe.
Precisely. The resident commentary here is vital. The local vibe isn't just a mood. It's an economic driver and a sustainability feature. If the residents feel ownership, they protect the place. If tourists feel a connection, they respect the place.
Okay, so businesses are doing the work but not talking about it. Residents want authenticity but struggle a bit to practice what they preach. Now let's talk about the wild card. The tourists.
The tourists. This was, for me, maybe the biggest surprise of the entire study.
Usually we have this cynical view that tourists just want to consume, right? They want the AC cold, the buffet full, and they don't want to think about the landfill.
We do tend to think that.
Oh, yeah.
But this study just busts that myth wide open. The tourists in Banks Peninsula are highly engaged. Again, that 75% number comes up. 75% knew the concept of regenerative tourism.
75%. That is incredibly high for a general population. Are we sure they didn't just check the box to look good?
Self-reporting bias is always a risk, for sure. But the qualitative responses really back it up. They expressed a willingness to reduce their environmental footprint. They actively seek sustainable options. But here is the real insight, the aha moment of the paper.
Lay it on me.
The tourists view these sustainable experiences as a way to enhance their personal well-being and consciousness.
Wait, so they see saving the planet as a form of self-care?
In a way, yes, they view it as a psychological reward. Participating in something regenerative like planting a tree or learning about local conservation or protecting a waterway, it makes them feel good. It transforms the trip from just seeing to being part of.
That is fascinating. It completely reframes the whole thing. It's not a sacrifice to be green. It's a value add to the trip.
Exactly. And this connects directly back to the businesses. Remember how they were afraid to talk about their green efforts because they didn't want to annoy the guest?
Right. The killjoy effect.
Well, the tourists are sitting there saying, please tell me, I want to feel good about this trip. I want to help.
It's a perfect mismatch. You have a buyer who wants the product, that good feeling of helping, and a seller who has the product but is hiding it because they think nobody wants it.
That is the massive opportunity the study identifies. Tourists expressed a specific interest in learning how their journey impacts the local community. They are literally asking for the education that the businesses are so hesitant to give.
Okay, so this brings it all together. The paper calls it the convergence and the challenge. What happens when we overlay these three maps?
Well, the good news is that the values align. Everyone, businesses, residents, tourists, they all agree on the importance of authenticity, sense of place, and environmental protection. There's no conflict on the why.
That's rare. Usually you have developers fighting locals or tourists trashing the place. But here, everyone's singing from the same song sheet.
Theoretically, yes. But the how is where the machine is jamming. We have what the researchers call the intention-action gap.
Break that down for us.
The values align, but the operational side is lagging. Businesses need funding and policy support to feel confident enough to speak up. Residents need a bit of education and resources to bridge that gap between supporting the idea and doing it in their daily lives.
And the tourists?
Well, the tourists are ready, they're waiting, but they need the industry to provide the transparent information and the storytelling they crave.
They need someone to hand them the shovel, metaphorically or literally.
Exactly. And this leads to the central argument of the paper, co-creation.
Co-creation. Sounds a bit academic. What does that actually look like on a Tuesday morning in Banks Peninsula?
It means you can't just manage this from the top down. The government can't just mandate regenerative tourism and expect it to happen. It requires a system where residents, tourists, and businesses actively shape the experience together.
So instead of a business creating a tour in a boardroom and selling it to a passive tourist while the resident watches from their window,
it's the resident helping design the tour based on local knowledge. It's the business facilitating it. And it's the tourist actively participating, maybe collecting data on bird life or contributing to a community garden, and then taking that knowledge home with them.
it blurs the lines between host and guest.
It does, and that's essential because regeneration is a complex living process. It's not a product you buy off a shelf. It's a relationship. You can't just buy regeneration. You have to participate in it.
I really like that distinction. It makes travel feel less like a transaction and more like a A collaboration.
And for Banks Peninsula, the ingredients are all there. They have the engaged businesses, the passionate locals, and the conscious travelers. They just need to connect the wiring between them.
So as we wrap this up, let's zoom out. If I'm a listener, maybe I work in the industry, or maybe I'm just planning my next vacation.
Yeah.
Why does this study matter?
It matters because it proves that regenerative tourism is no longer a niche for a few green backpackers. The demand exists across the board. It's becoming the expectation.
It's the new baseline.
It is. We're moving from an era of minimizing harm to an era of active renewal. For businesses, the takeaway is stop being shy. Stop green hushing. Don't hide your efforts. Your customers want to hear about them. They want to be part of that story.
And for the traveler?
For the traveler, it's about realizing the power you have. Your desire to learn and to help is actually a resource for the destination. You're not just a wallet walking around. You're a potential partner in regeneration.
You know, I have this thought that's been sticking in my head. We usually travel to get away or to get something, a tan, a souvenir, a memory. But this suggests something totally different.
What's that?
It suggests that in the future, the ultimate souvenir isn't a physical object. It's not a keychain or a T-shirt. It's the knowledge that the place you visited is actually healthier because you were there.
That is a powerful idea.
Can you imagine coming home and saying, I had a great time, and by the way, the coral reef is 1% healthier, or the local community has a new garden that I helped fund.
That's the psychological reward the tourists in the study were talking about. That is transformative. And the big question is, are destinations ready to sell that?
Exactly, because that is a very different product than a hotel room with a view.
A whole different ballgame.
It really is. It's a shift from consuming a place to healing a place. And if Banks Peninsula is any indication, people are ready for it.
They absolutely are. It's just a matter of building the bridges between them so they can do it together.
Well, that gives us plenty to think about before we book our next flight. A huge thank you to the authors Hussein and Fasti Forney for this fascinating look into the future of travel. And thanks to you, as always, for helping us unpack it.
My pleasure. It's an exciting time to be looking at the world.
And thank you for listening. Until next time, keep exploring and maybe think about what kind of footprint or handprint you want to leave behind. See ya.